Hey, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Very happy to be here today. We're gonna be having an interview with the Two Travelers Mexico. We're gonna have their link in the description of the video. Make sure you check out their channel if you haven't checked it out yet, and stay tuned for this interview. It's gonna be a good one.
Hi, everybody. I do good?
You said hi at the end.
Oh, well, you didn't kind of give me
I guess
space
I
in
didn't.
between.
I'm not used to
You
being
were
on
like,
camera with you.
and then I didn't get a chance.
We should just keep this in. Hey, what's up everybody? Very happy to be here today and very privileged to be hanging out with Mark and Paulette. In case you guys don't know, they have a channel on YouTube. It's called The Two Travelers Mexico. Very likely though, if you're watching this channel, you already know about them. So Mark, Paulette, thank you for taking the time to be with such a small channel like ours and talking with us today.
It's our pleasure.
Our pleasure.
How long have you guys lived in Mexico now?
A little over 3 years. We moved here in November of 2019 to Morelia. We were in Morelia for a year, and then we always knew that we were going to live in different places. So after our lease was up in Morelia, on one of our trips, we had driven through San Luis Potosi, and so we both thought we got to go back and check that out place a little bit more. But we're in the United States picking up some more Paulette stuff because
I'm a hoarder. I can't part with things. I have issues.
She had separation anxiety from her stuff. So when we came back through, we stopped in San Luis, stayed a little bit longer, and decided, well, this is going to be our next stop. So we went back to Morelia, gave our note, let our landlord know that we're not going to be renewing our lease when it was up, and then we came back here, rented an apartment downtown, started moving our stuff. Gave us about a month or so because we had like 5 or 6 carloads that we had to move.
I wanted to move it. I didn't want movers to do it because I've heard horror stories on things breaking and what have you. So.
Yeah,
right.
So,
and it was only 4 hours of drive, so it wasn't like it was
times 6. Actually times 12 because it's 4 hours each way.
Well, as long as your stuff got here in one piece, I guess, right?
Yeah. Awesome. It all got here. So we stayed about 6 months in our apartment, and we just decided that San Luis was going to be our permanent home. So then we started looking at houses. We looked at like 32 houses or more. And then we landed, one day came on this one and said this fits most of our needs. I mean, it didn't hit everything on our bucket list because it was really too modern than what we were originally looking for. So, but we decided just to
suck it up.
Suck it up, and we made a deal on this house, and now we're very happy with it. We're working on trying to make it look a little more Mexican, as you can see by our wall mural behind us, and in a few other places. So
absolutely, yeah, it's a beautiful home. It's a beautiful home. You didn't get into exactly why you settled on San Luis Potosi.
It was just sort of I can't point to any one thing. It was just a bunch of things, but mostly it was just a feeling that we had about it. It was my feeling.
It was his feeling because I thought, we're just going to keep traveling to other places, more places, more places, more places until we find that spot. But he said, no, I have a feeling this is where we're going to settle. And I'm like, no. And sure enough.
But then, but that was it. That was the only time I ever said anything. And that was during one of our moves where we were bringing stuff back here. And then I never really brought it up again. And in fact, never really thought about it again until a few months later when we started kicking around the idea of buying a home here.
Wow.
So in answer to your question, no, it wasn't any one specific thing. It was just a number of things, and then just a feeling, which isn't, of course, a physical thing.
Right.
That this is it for us. This is our home.
So you guys sound like you're here. You're in SLP. You have no plans on moving.
No.
Wow, that is excellent.
No, this is our home base. We travel to places every once a month, once every 6 weeks or whatever. but we're always happy to come back here to our home base.
Do you ever miss not living in Mexico, living in the United States?
No.
Okay.
No, not at all.
Wow. That
Sorry,
was
was that answer too quick?
no, that was the answer I expected because
Yeah.
I feel the same way being here now.
Yeah.
Do you mind telling us some of the things that you don't miss, since there's nothing that you do miss?
What we don't miss about
The U.S.
the United,
Maybe some of the reasons that brought you here, perhaps, or some of the things that you're happy to do without.
I'm happy to do without being blasted with news 24/7 and the divisiveness that causes. I'm happy that I'm not
Stuck in that
caught
rat race.
up in
anymore.
the rat race, because if we were still in the U.S., I would still be working and doing that thing and the commute and having 10 or 12 hours out of my day taken up by work.
Wow.
You know, although I enjoyed my work a lot and it paid very well and I really liked what I did, I'm happier to be here, retired, and having my whole day for me to decide what I would like to do that day, or us to decide what we would like to do that day. So,
I personally didn't like a lot of the changes that I saw happening in the
Okay.
United States. And we knew before we moved to Mexico that when we were ready to retire that we would go elsewhere. We looked in Ecuador. We went to Ecuador twice. We went to Spain. We went to Portugal. But that was actually too far from where our children were, because they lived in the United States. And if we have ever had to get back for an emergency situation, it would take just about a whole day between flights, layovers, and all that stuff. So our next spot to check out was Mexico. And that was in 2018, and we fell in love with it. The people, the culture, the beauty, the history, just everything. I mean, it stole our hearts. We had to be here.
So I guess you kind of touched on this a little bit, but how do you find the people here in Mexico?
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. Loving, caring, kind, helpful, accepting.
They're always happy to see you. They, like we were talking about before, almost at the end of every conversation, they'll say, "Thank you for coming to my country," or "moving to my country." A lot of times, after the conversation, they'll invite you to their house. There's stuff like that, stuff you wouldn't really see
In the United
United
States.
States.
Right.
The other thing that I really like that we kind of haven't touched on yet is the culture of family here. I mean, everybody, like as people get older, the parents get older, the kids don't put them in a home typically. I mean, they take them into their house, and sometimes you'll see 2 or 3 generations of family living in the same house. But they also go out, they're in public places a lot. Mexicans live a lot of their life outdoors, so you'll see
outside.
whole families in public places, sometimes even at 9, 10, 11 at night in parks and stuff, and the kids are running around
Playing.
just having a good time, enjoying life. Whereas in the U.S., I'm not really sure that enjoying life is happening in that way necessarily.
In the U.S., I think it's people work, they go to work, they come home, they park their car in the garage, they go inside, you don't see them. They get up the next morning and they do it all again. I mean, they're not enjoying life, I think, with families like Mexico does.
Yeah, that's
Is
exactly
how
it.
I
They're,
would-
they're just, Mexicans, I think, just are living in many ways a fuller, richer life. They're not driven by commercialism necessarily or anything like that. They're driven by more family-oriented goals.
Ever since we've come to Mexico, no matter what city we've been in, the materialism has been so low. I mean, Brittany and I would go sometimes even weeks on our other trips, not even watching television, barely thinking about our phones. It's a completely different way of life, and it really allows you to be free and be yourself and ease away from all that stress. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's,
Slower pace.
yeah.
Right.
Living in Mexico, in many ways, is a more freeing experience. And by freeing is that you can kind of do what you want to do here as long as you're not hurting someone else. I mean, it's just a freer life. Seems like there are less rules to follow. You don't have people, living next to you reporting their neighbors for some code violation or something like that.
Or
People
because
are,
the music's too loud
Yeah.
at 2:00 in the morning.
yeah,
Right.
or for what I call the soundtrack of Mexico, barking dogs.
Right.
They're just not concerned with that. They're
It's
just,
more accepting, I think.
yeah.
Yeah, they don't let that stuff get to them.
Do either of you have an idea about why that might be?
Other than I believe it goes back generations or centuries. I mean, if you look at the culture per se, I mean, I think Mexico's been very family oriented for a long, long time now. Whether that culture came from the Spanish when they came over here in 1520, I think, or whether that happened later on, or whether it was the culture of the Aztecs and Mayans and the Nahuatl and some of the other people that lived here before the Spanish came. I don't know if it was even going on at that time, the whole culture of family.
What's your thought?
So basically, well, in your opinions, it might have been the culture just handed down over the generations, and that culture is just different than what we find in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely different.
I think so. I think you're right. I think it's how you're brought up, the mindset that you have, the types of households that you have. You probably have your parents here around a little bit more than you do over back in the U.S. People are always working. You get handed off to maybe a nanny who doesn't care too much about you. Not all the time.
Yeah.
But over here, you're getting that family and that unity, and that carries through generations. It's beautiful. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. How do you guys find it best to transfer money?
Honestly, we just use a Charles Schwab card.
Okay.
We've attempted a couple of times to set up a bank account here, and they tell us, yeah, it's all set up. In the first case, we actually put money into the account. We had an account. They kept closing the account, but didn't tell us why when there was still plenty of money left in there. So eventually we wound up just taking that money out of the bank.
Okay.
Going to another bank.
We went to another bank and they set up an account, but they wouldn't allow us to deposit any money into it. And I'm not entirely sure why they told us to come back the first time in 5 days. So we went back in 5 days. It still wasn't set up. So then they told us to come back in 10 days.
We went up to
Yeah.
the teller. We had our money with us to go ahead and deposit. We go up to the teller, and we explained to them I brought my bank account, and everything, and the money was there to deposit. And they just had this confused look on their face, and I didn't understand quite what was going on. And finally, they called somebody over to help us, and they said, "No, you have to wait another 10 days." To deposit the money, which is mind-blowing. I don't understand it.
Yeah.
The first bank didn't work that way.
Yeah.
The second bank did.
And they never did tell us what the delay was.
It was their process. But
Yeah,
we had
so-
friends that went there a couple of months before. They deposited the money as soon as they opened the account.
Yeah.
But for us, it was messed up.
Yeah.
Didn't
So
make any sense.
we are still looking to open a bank account because it does have some advantages. Some of the businesses here won't take an American credit card, some of the online ones especially.
And it's funny, Costco, we can use our American card in Costco when we make purchases in person. However, if there's something online we want to buy, we cannot do that with our American card.
Yeah.
So it would just come in handy, like Mark says.
So But we're just basically using our Schwab card now, which gives us our, they reimburse us any fees that we have to pay.
It's really nice. It's really nice. I mean, you get charged a fee, and at the end of the month, all those fees get reimbursed right back into your account. So I would suggest anybody coming to Mexico, get a Charles Schwab account.
Yeah.
And you usually do it online, but stay there long enough to get your card and then bring it.
Right. We're not sponsored by Schwab,
No.
of course, or anything, even though it's sounding like it right now, but that's just how we get money right now.
It works really well.
Okay.
Yeah.
We actually have a Schwab card too,
Uh-huh.
and we find that it's great for ease of use, but conversion rate, it may not. It doesn't take away the fact that you get a poor conversion rate based on the bank that you're going to, at least in our experience. So we're actually looking into another card. Do you remember what it's called? Wise. I don't know if you guys have ever
Wise.
heard of it.
Yeah.
They used to be TransferWise, now they're
Right.
just Wise. However, important to note is that a lot of the conversion is set by some government, the Mexican government. They have a hand in setting the conversion rates too. It's not just your
Okay.
credit card or the U.S.
And then just one other thing to mention is whenever you do go to an ATM machine, it'll always ask you, do you accept the conversion fee? You always decline that. You never accept that, and you'll still get your money out. So a lot of people that come here that don't know that when they first go to the ATM, they think they have to do that. So they'll accept that, and that can be,
$30
$10,
or $40, I
yeah,
think.
$20, $25
Yeah.
of free money that they're just giving away. But if you say no, you decline that, it'll continue and you'll still get your
Yeah.
money out of the ATM.
How do you guys find the driving over in SLP specifically? Do you drive?
Oh yeah,
Often?
we drive. We have our
I drive because I'm the temporary,
Right.
he's the permanent, and permanent, you're not allowed to drive a foreign plated car.
However, I can drive our car.
Yeah.
It's just that Paulette is that unique combination of a good driver and a bad passenger. So,
Stop telling my secrets.
so it's just better for our relationship if she drives. However, the driving here it's interesting because it's got its good thing. If you're driving on a main road and there's a truck in front of you, very often they'll pull to the shoulder of the road, but then turn on their left-hand turn signal. They're not signaling that they're going to make a left-hand turn. They're signaling you behind them that it's safe for you to pass
With the trucks, yeah.
with trucks. So the
Big
truck
rigs will do that.
the trucks drivers are very considerate here. But the Mexican drivers in cars, I mean, they are the kindest people in the world until they get behind the wheel.
Right.
And then you'll be sitting, as an example, you'll be sitting at a stoplight if you're the first car there. Even before that stoplight turns green, someone behind you is on the horn to go.
Because you didn't go fast enough
yeah.
before the light turned green.
Right, you didn't start rolling through because
Yeah.
the light was going to turn green in another second. And also, like, if you're driving in a roundabout, and there's one fairly close to where you guys are staying, the drivers on the very inside will very often just make a sharp right-hand turn in front of you if you're on the outside, and cut you off because they waited till the last minute to make their turn. Whereas in, the U.S. as an example, we're used to, if you know you're going to get off soon, you work your way over to the right lane and then turn. But these guys, they stay in the left-hand most lane and then just make a sharp right in front of you. So you got to
Always be aware.
Yeah,
Be
you got to be
aware.
prepared to get on the brakes. And then another thing is that, like in the U.S., how you'll be parked or something, or you'll be at a stoplight a few cars back. A motorcycle will go whizzing by you between cars on the left-hand side. And that's a little unsettling. Well, in Mexico, you'll have an Uber Eats driver pass you on the left and a Didi, food driver pass you on the right at the same
They
time.
pass you at the same time, and that always scares me because I don't expect that. And so I'll get them both passing me, like raring by me at the same time, which
Yeah.
takes me back a little bit because I don't expect that. And it's, you
Yeah.
know, I've been here for over 3 years, and you think I'd get used to it, but it always surprises me still.
Yeah. Yeah, you never quite get used to it.
And I would say driving in Mexico is not for the faint of heart. You need to really, you know, not be afraid of driving, because you'll be intimidated for sure.
Yeah. And I always hear people say, don't drive at night. And that's not because you're going to get, you know, pulled over by like some cartel or something like that. That's because there could be a horse in the road, a cow in the road. There could be
Potholes you can't see,
an
big
unmarked,
topes you can't
an
see.
unmarked tope that if you hit it at just the right spot, it'll launch you into low Earth orbit, you know.
And a tope is basically a speed bump.
Yeah.
But in Mexico, some of them are
Yeah.
crazy big.
Yeah.
Because we did that once, remember? Almost launched into space.
Yeah, we did right over here, as a matter of fact. So,
Wow. That is crazy. And you know what's funny? I found some of SLP's topes to be some of the most forgiving, which is scary.
yeah.
Yeah.
Some of them aren't bad. You know, the other thing is that, like when you're driving at night, like in the U.S. on main roadways, they'll use reflective paint as an example. Here in Mexico, they don't really. Now in San Luis, they put down these flashing markers, you know, to divide
Looks
the
like
lanes.
little Christmas lights in the lanes that light up.
Yeah, which maybe if you were someone prone to seizures, that might freak you out. But
Right.
you know, so that's how they do it here. Maybe in other cities in Mexico it's a little bit different, but I don't think I've seen reflective paint used anywhere on streets in the cities we've been in Mexico.
Yeah.
And a lot of the city streets don't have the lines down them.
Yeah,
So like you might get 3 lanes, and in Mexico they like to make it 4 lanes because they can kind of squeeze in.
Yeah.
And you don't know where you should actually be, because this car over here in the 4th lane that they just made is kind of taking over the 4th lane and the 3rd lane at the same time.
yeah,
So you just got to be aware of that stuff. Always be alert of everybody, everything,
yeah.
all the time when you're driving,
And
because
then-
you never know.
Here's another thing too. A lot of times, you know, in Mexico, there's a lot of one-way streets, and including San Luis Potosi. As coming from the United States, you're kind of used to looking down a one-way street and seeing which way the cars are faced, so you can tell which direction that street goes. Not necessarily here, because you look down a street and there'll be cars, you know, one-way street, there'll be cars facing both
Both
directions.
directions.
And sometimes you'll see cars driving in both directions, even though it's a one-way street.
Absolutely. So
So-
we've learned to do that. Like if it says it's one way going this way,
Yeah.
we look
We
both
look both
ways
ways
just to
still.
see, because it doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything.
Yeah. Advance into the intersection at your own risk.
Right.
And the same goes with walking too, because pedestrians don't have the right of way here. So if you happen to find yourself in a crosswalk when someone decides to make a left-hand turn on a red light, you could be in trouble.
Yeah, the drivers have the right of way here in Mexico, so
Yeah.
just wait, be patient and wait. Somebody will eventually stop. Don't cross, don't do it.
Don't do
Just
it.
wait.
Cross at your own risk.
Yeah.
We found that too. Some of the worst driving out of all the places in Mexico that we've ever seen have been here.
Yeah.
But we hear that going to Guadalajara is 10 times worse than this, so we'll find out soon.
She's okay.
I've twice we've driven through Guadalajara on the freeway, and by the time I'm off that freeway, I'm ready to check myself in at the Shady Inn. I'm
Yeah.
not kidding you.
Yeah.
I am so, I don't know, I'm a wreck by the time I'm off that freeway, because it'll tell you like you're gonna be, it says like, you
Yeah.
know, like you're gonna merge to the left.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? There's cars that are coming on to the left when you're supposed to merge to
Yeah.
the left. Then you got cars that are merging on to the right. And so those 3 or 4 lanes are now 8 lanes.
Yeah.
And it's just wild.
And Google Maps is telling you,
Yeah.
turn left in 100 meters. And you're in bumper-to-bumper traffic, so you're in no way getting there. And that is part of the reason why we take the bus to Guadalajara now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
No.
So,
But you try it and you get back to me and let me know how it
Yeah.
works for you.
We will let you know. We'll probably be taking the rail system when we're there a lot, but we'll see. Out of everything that you've still mentioned, you still have huge smiles on your face and would still recommend moving to Mexico and specifically, I guess, SLP,
Oh, wow.
even with all of this.
Yeah, our subscribers that have come here because they watched our videos have said, quit recommending SLP. We don't want to turn it into an expat haven. But
San Luis Potosi is not an expat haven by any means. And
Yeah.
so that was a place that we chose
Yeah.
to live. Why we still have smiles on our face is because this is the best move we've ever made. And we are so grateful, so blessed to be here every day.
yeah,
Is the God's truth. We just absolutely love it. The people, everything that we said
Exactly.
earlier. I mean, I couldn't be happier. Every day I wake up and I just feel so lucky to be here that this is our life.
maybe you guys have experienced this, but wherever we go in Mexico, if we're out walking on the street, complete strangers will say, buen dia, buenas tardes, buenas noches, and stuff, and they mean it. Whereas you're not going to get complete strangers in the U.S. saying, good afternoon, good evening, stuff like that, just walking by.
Right? Yeah, we've seen that too in Mexico in general. Surprisingly enough, we've actually, or maybe not surprisingly, we've actually found that to be less here in SLP, which actually says a lot about Mexico in general. The people here, we spoke to a couple of locals, and they actually mentioned that the people here are very neutral and a little bit more reserved than a lot of the other places in Mexico. But the fact that we have seen what you mentioned, even here, shows you how warm Mexico in general is, which is beautiful.
Yeah, maybe so, but like walking around our neighborhood, if people are out on the street, jogging, walking their dogs, what have you, they'll still say buen dia, buenas noches and stuff. Maybe, downtown we probably don't get that as much in Centro Historico, but
That's probably what I was thinking of.
yeah,
Probably more downtown. In your area, it's probably much more homey and kind and right.
yeah,
Definitely. I can see that. And that's kind of par for the course. When you're in a huge city, a lot going on, people are busy, people are rushing around. They're not thinking about saying hi, they're thinking about work and things like that.
True.
So where do you guys see this city going? Do you see any big things in the future for it, or?
I see a lot of expansion on the periphery of San Luis, and by expansion I mean we're seeing a lot of housing communities going in. We're seeing also a lot of manufacturing coming here. San Luis, they have a lot of like automobile plants, as an example. There's a lot of them here. There's BMW, there's Volkswagen, there's a new General Motors plant. And so they're doing that kind of expansion, as well as, housing communities, as well as they call fraccionary privadas, or fraccionary privadas, and that kind of thing. It's not expanding much in the city just because everything is built out, and they're not going to demolish houses to build high-rises. They just don't do that here. But San Luis as a city is expanding outwards.
Right. We've seen so much construction.
Yeah.
All these different communities that are just being built up. It's amazing.
Like they don't, as an example, there aren't any high-rise buildings here that you would consider. The tallest buildings you can see here maybe 4 or 5 stories.
No, maybe a
At
little bit
most.
higher
Maybe a
than
little bit
that. I
taller
think
than
some of
that,
the apartment complexes or condos that are up
Maybe.
on the hills, those are probably, they might be,
10 or 12.
yeah, they might be at least 10, I
Okay.
would say. But you
Yeah.
don't see the high rises like you do in Mexico City, like you saw when we were in Puebla,
Yeah.
like you see in a lot of places. You see the city where it's really, like being in downtown San Francisco, something like that.
Yeah.
We don't have that here.
Yeah, there's no 50-story buildings going in, and there may not ever be. at least in Central anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
eventually, you know, in the years and decades to come, that might happen on the outskirts. Who knows? But, you know, that's what we see is San Luis expanding more horizontally than vertically.
It's really nice. It'll still lend to the expanse of the city, but still kind of keep it a relatively small town feel. Nothing over intimidating,
Yeah.
super high, taking up the view. You'll always be able to see the mountains, hopefully, so that's wonderful.
I think we should do a video in another 10 years and retouch on this area and
Yeah.
see where
What
we're
it
at.
looks like
Yeah.
now.
With the construction I've been seeing going on, it is going to be miraculous. How do you guys find the infrastructure here? And I'll just specify by saying, for example, we've been to different places in Mexico where the hot water wasn't really abundant. The toilets didn't flush properly as far as you couldn't put toilet paper in the actual toilets. This is things that people in the US aren't accustomed to.
Yeah.
But in Mexico, it actually is something that exists. How do you find SLP in regards to that infrastructure?
Well, with the newer construction, you know, like our house, you can flush the toilet paper down the toilet. And the older construction, it's an issue because number one, the plumbing is old, and they use smaller piping. And so that's, you know, until they do something to upgrade the infrastructure in the older buildings, that will probably always be a problem. With new construction, it's not really a problem. We have fiber optic available in pretty much every major city here. You know, we get hot water, you know, just because we have a gas hot water heater tank. But you know, the water is another story, because pretty much throughout Mexico they'll pump water to your house at a specific time of the day, whether it's in the morning or afternoon or what. It's never like a continuous pumping process, or the lines aren't always pressurized.
You're talking here.
In Mexico.
Well, I think not all of Mexico. Some of them have those, what is it, garrafons or whatever?
Right, but I'm getting to that point.
Oh,
So they
okay.
pump the water into the tanks that are usually located in the driveway or on the roof, you know, maybe once a day. And then that's the water that you have for that day. And so hopefully you don't use it all. They're usually pretty good sized tanks, but they're not, the water delivery system is not constantly pressurized like it is pretty much everywhere in the US.
So when throughout your day you guys are just conscious of not using too much water and not wasting, like in the US we might maybe turn the shower on 5 minutes early, make sure it's hot, because you know there'll always be water coming out. Over here, more conservative, more respectful of the resources.
Yeah, I mean, we would be respectful, Paula and I would be respectful of the resources in the US too, but here, yeah, as far as water goes, it's probably a little more important.
Is there any other place that you guys would consider moving within Mexico? Well, if San Luis didn't exist, where would you go? And would you ever leave San Luis for any other place?
Well, Paulette recently fell in love with Puebla, which is a beautiful city, and if we didn't already own a home here in San Luis, I think we would absolutely consider it.
It's beautiful.
Forgetting the fact that there are several volcanoes, including an active one there.
There's 5
Yeah.
volcanoes with 1 active, so not so high on my list
Yeah.
because of that, but it's beautiful. My friend says that it's like right out of New Orleans, which I've never been to, but it's got that French influence.
Yeah.
And it's a gorgeous
Yeah.
city. I would recommend everyone to go there
Yeah.
and see what they think.
But other than that, no, I see our home as always being in San Luis.
Do you guys find meeting so many Americans through your travels or your channel, for example, so many Americans come to you and reach out to you, do you find that a lot of people fall in love with the place that they originally come to, automatically buy something because the prices are so much substantially lower than the US, and then kind of wish they didn't do that right away?
You know, I don't personally think we've run into that situation where someone has buyer's remorse. we always tell people, when you come to Mexico, don't necessarily buy a house right away. Experience Mexico first, figure out if it's going to be here, if it meets your expectations, number one, because living here is different than vacationing here. Once you get into the routine of setting up your, utility services and doing it, and doing a monthly thing and really settling into life here is different than just vacationing here for a few weeks. We always tell people not to buy right away. Start at some places, your starting point, check that city out. If it's for you, great. But still go experience other cities, because so that you can kind of narrow things down and figure out what you really want versus what that city or place has to offer. If it meets your expectations or enough of your expectations, and also keeping in mind that, each city that you go to, it has its different personality, a different look and feel.
It has its own beauty within itself, and you're
Yeah.
never going to find two places, I think, that are the same.
So we always, like I said, we would advise people not to buy right away, just to come and experience Mexico
And rent furnished is what I
Rent
always tell
furnished,
people.
yeah.
Rent furnished for the first year. Travel around Mexico, check out other places. If you find places that you like, go back a second time. If you still have that same vibe that you had the first time, then great.
Yeah.
If you want to make a third trip, check it out one more time just to be sure, because buying is a big commitment. And buying in Mexico doesn't mean when you put your house on the market, it's going to sell like it does in the States. It means that your house could be for sale for 1, 2, 3, 4 years.
Yeah,
So it's just not the same as it is in the States. So know that too. That's a really important part of buying, I think.
yeah. Our house that we're sitting in now, it was a brand new house. It sat vacant for a year before we bought it. So, and that was new construction.
It was
So-
during COVID though too.
Yeah, but I think in general in Mexico, things just don't turn around right away. If you buy something, you're probably going to have it for a few years at least.
So we don't personally know anybody that has buyer's remorse. If they do, maybe they just haven't been outspoken about it. But the people that we know that have bought are pretty happy with where they've bought. A few, like our friends that live in Puerto Vallarta, they're not, our Nuevo Puerto Vallarta?
Nuevo Vallarta.
Okay. They're not super happy with the hotness and all that stuff, but will they move? I don't know. Maybe one day. Do Mark and I travel to places like Puebla that I love and fall in love with it? Absolutely. But the thing about living here is we're still happy living here, and we can always go and visit other places.
Yeah.
It's not a problem.
Yeah.
There's 32 different states to visit in Mexico. You can be traveling a long time, seeing different places,
Yeah.
and be happy.
We have some friends that swore that they would never buy property in Mexico. 6 months later, they bought an apartment.
No,
here
it was a year later.
A year later,
They did
bought
rent furnished for the
They
first
bought
year.
an apartment here in San Luis, and they're just as happy as can be.
Yeah, it blew my mind. I'm like, wait a minute,
Yeah.
what happened to we'll never buy
Yeah.
a house in Mexico?
Wow.
Yeah.
And they're so happy with their purchase, and they absolutely love it.
Is there anything you would change about San Luis?
Okay, I'll answer this
Okay.
while you're thinking about it. Actually, yes. For me, the historical central area is nice. It's got a huge pedestrian walk area here. But what I would like to see is more of the iron rails on the windows with a bunch of hanging plants, maybe a little bit more color to the city. But that's basically about it. Maybe some
Yeah.
vendors, more vendors that sell The potatoes,
Yeah,
the sweet potatoes,
Paulette, and
camotes.
in a few cities like Oaxaca and Huatulco, they sell these things called camotes. It basically is what they are, is a steamed, like red sweet potato, and they serve them up to you. They smash them. They put on cheese and cream and stuff, and they're really very good. There aren't many camote vendors
There's
here,
one.
so yeah, that other than the
Mexico
sort of
City had it too.
superficial things that Paulette mentioned about like more color on the buildings and stuff. She'd like to see more
Camote.
camote vendors. Yeah.
I would.
For me, I'm pretty much good with the way things are here. I mean, the city is trying to make some, improvements in some infrastructure and stuff. They're, within the last year or two, they started lighting up some of the different roads at night with lights and stuff, which is nice because
The overhead lights.
the
he's
overhead
talking.
lights, yeah. Which is nice because driving those roads at night before was not for the faint of heart. So they are making some improvements.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with the progress that I've seen made here in a little over 2 years.
Yeah, we've been here for
Yeah.
a little over 2 years, and we love it. I mean, we have no regrets about buying here, living here, moving to Mexico, retiring in Mexico. It's all good
Yeah.
with us. I think it's the best decision that we've made.
Like anywhere else, I mean, Mexico has its sort of hiccups. I mean, you're not, things aren't going to be 100%
It's not perfect.
but
Right.
and you're going to run into struggles, some of them related to language and customs and things like that, and they just do things different here. There isn't as much automation here as you would see in the United States. Like a lot of times when you're dealing with government offices, you have to go to the government office at your appointment time, do whatever paperwork you need to do, and then if there's a fee to be paid, you have to leave that office, go to a bank, pay that fee and then
Their
get that
account
receipt.
number.
Yeah, with their account number, with their receipt, take that receipt back to the office, and then you finish business there. It's never going to be, a lot of times it's not like a one-stop
No.
thing. There's going to be
It's
2
not.
or 3 steps and probably a whole day involved possibly.
The word to moving to Mexico is flexible. Have flexibility.
Yeah,
That's for sure. Don't get your panties in a bunch because that'll happen like all the time. So really you need to just, chill out, do it
Yeah.
their way. And if it takes once or twice or 3 or 4 times, it'll get done eventually. But just try to chill. And for us A-type personalities, it's kind of hard sometimes.
you just have to accept the fact that things aren't going to always happen on your time frame.
Yeah, and not the way that it happened in the U.S. either. It's different. You're in another culture, another country. You need to do things their way and just suck it up, buttercup, and do it.
Respect the culture, respect the country.
Yeah.
Amazing insight. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Thank you so much for having the channel that you have to inform everybody about the beauty in Mexico, about the differences between here, the United States, and so many other places. We really appreciate you guys taking the time.
Yeah,
Oh,
no problem.
thank you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
It's our
It was-
pleasure to do that. I mean, we just try to inform people as much as we can about visiting Mexico, because all people hear is what is put out on the news, and you're
Yeah.
going to get murdered, you're going to get killed, cartels, blah, blah, blah. Where we say, come to Mexico and try it out.
Yeah.
Leave your Americanness behind when you cross the border. Be willing, acceptable, and embrace Mexico.
And it was a pleasure also to meet you guys in person.
Yeah.
We did have a video chat a few months back and got a pretty good feel for who you guys are as people. And
And you didn't
since-
disappoint us.
yeah, and now that we've met you in person, we were, our assumption about you two was right. I think you're just great people and wonderful people, and proud to call you our friends now.
I feel the same way. I am so grateful to you guys for opening your home to us, for opening your lives to us, and taking us in as friends. We feel the same way. We're very grateful. Very grateful. We did not expect to be leaving today with the level of friendship that I feel like we are, and that's such a blessing.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to do with you guys.
Same here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I look forward to seeing your upcoming videos on the channel.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.